And here to explain this amendment is the bill's author, my good friend from South Carolina, Congressman Jeff Duncan. And with that, I yield him 5 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank the gentleman for the time. I rise in opposition to the previous question so that we can amend the rule to immediately consider H.R. 751, the Protecting American Energy Production Act. Now, my bill is straightforward. It prohibits the president from declaring a moratorium on the use of hydraulic fracturing or fracking unless Congress authorizes the moratorium. It further expresses the sense of Congress that states should maintain the authority for regulation of oil and natural gas production on state and private land. It's how it's been done for decades. President Biden and House Democrats have wasted no time in this Congress and since his administration began undermining American energy independence. They've signaled that they will use any tool necessary to end fossil fuel production in the United States. In fact, Democrats keep rushing to President Biden's defense, claiming he never supported a fracking ban. It's just simply not true, because when he was asked by a debate moderator during the presidential debates 2019 if there was any place for fossil fuels in his administration, this is what Senator Biden, now President Biden, actually said. He said, quote, "No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated." Talking about fossil fuels. How is this policy working out for the American people at the pump? They're seeing higher prices for gasoline, and they're getting ready to travel over the holidays, vacation, and they're paying more at the pump. That's less money to spend on their family for family vacations during the holidays this summer. That's what bad policy gets you. President Biden has already made good on his promises to revoke the Keystone XL permit, ultimately resulting in its cancellation and the loss of thousands of American and Canadian jobs. Thousands of jobs. He also has halted all new federal oil and gas leases. There's no telling which energy-killing promise he'll fulfill next as he continues his war against American energy. Instead of prioritizing American jobs and American energy, President Biden and the Democrats would rather appease the backwards logic of the radical environmental left. Have no other way to say it. They would rather make us weaker and more reliant on energy from our foreign adversaries at a time when we were energy independent. We are actually exporting oil and gas. The adversaries that they are supporting have no regard for the environmental standards that we help push in this country. The INVEST Act, or more accurately titled the Green New Deal and Inflation Transportation Act, is a continuation of this America Last agenda. 1 out of every $2 spent in this bill is tied up in Green New Deal priorities. 1 out of $2 are tied up in Green New Deal priorities. It's ironic that while President Biden has no problem killing American jobs, energy projects, he is greenlighting at the same time Russian energy projects, like the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that's going to bring gas into Europe and give Vladimir Putin even more control to manipulate politics in Europe. President Biden doesn't think twice before waiving sanctions on a Russian company and a friend of Vladimir Putin. Undercutting American energy production is a handout to Vladimir Putin. It opens the door for Russian influence operations across Europe and even the United States. New England doesn't have a pipeline for natural gas to come up there. They bring a LNG ship coming from Russia that provides natural gas to the New England states. Russia, not American gas. Colonial pipeline cyber attacks, most recent, a reminder of this long-standing effort by the Russians. Putin will continue to use energy as a political weapon. Policies like the partisan Green New Deal infrastructure package, Democrats will continue to help Russia, not the American families. They're paying more at the pump this summer. Russia, Vladimir Putin. Putin will continue to use those policies. The real infrastructure problems we should be focused on is hardening our energy infrastructure to protect against these attacks. But the INVEST Act doesn't do this. It instead remakes the entire energy market, squeezes fossil fuels, and makes the grid far more vulnerable to attacks. The INVEST Act puts radical climate and Green New Deal priorities above the infrastructure needs of the nation. It creates more roadblocks for transporting clean-burning LNG, gives more money to EV charging stations than the entire Rebuild Rural Grant Program, and fails to include any regulatory reforms that plague infrastructure projects. My goodness. Instead of voting on a $548 billion Green New Deal disguised infrastructure bill, we should be protecting American energy production, American energy jobs here in the United States. Not long ago, the U.S. depended on OPEC for much of our oil supply. We now lead the world in oil and gas production as well as emission reduction. That's a fact that the left doesn't want to acknowledge. We lead the world in emissions reduction. Democrats refuse to acknowledge this and recognize this. Instead, they want to surrender one of our greatest economic and strategic advantages, our energy independence. Admiral Mike Mullins once said, "There is no national security without energy security."
I would yield as much time as the gentleman may consume.
Gentleman's recognized for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you. About to finish up. Listen to this. There is no national security without energy security. How true is that statement? This is all in the name of saving the climate. The reality is phasing out fossil fuels in the United States won't eliminate carbon emissions globally. It won't. Production will just happen someplace else, oftentimes in dirty production areas because they don't have the same regulations that we have. So the environment gets dirtier, along with the jobs and geopolitical leverage that we have when we export our energy. Democrats' anti-fossil fuel agenda will have no effect on the climate. Eliminating fossil fuels will also undercut our own economic interest. On average, federal fracking ban will increase household energy costs by $618 a year. You know, allowing President Biden to ban fracking will make all of this worse. Russia, China, Iran, they stand ready to take advantage of us as we continue to pursue the self-inflicting harm. By prohibiting the president from banning fracking, we in turn safeguard our energy production, our national security, our geopolitical influence, the livelihoods of Americans, thousands of Americans who have lost their job. And at the end of the day, American citizens, our constituents, pay less at the pump and for their energy, household energy needs when we produce energy here in this country. That's a winning solution, and this bill that we're hoping to replace isn't. So if President Biden wants to back up his Buy America rhetoric, I got a question for him. Why not start right here? Let's buy American energy. If he truly believes in Buy America, let's buy American energy and support American energy jobs. So I urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question so that the House will immediately consider this bill, put Americans back to work, and protect our national energy security. With that, I yield back.